Welcome to the Amateur Golfer's Dilemma YouTube channel. My name is David Seaman. This is me 20 years ago, actually going on 21 years ago when I was 41 years old. So what is the dilemma? Here's how I define the dilemma. The amateur golfer's dilemma is the outcome of multiple error factors within our approach to swinging the club that prevents us from striking the ball effectively. Now here's the thing you need to understand. These error factors are correctable. The most important error factor I will describe in this video, and it is correctable without doing anything with your clubs. You don't have to buy balls, buy gadgets. You can actually correct it in your garage if you have room. If you live up north and you're in the winter right now with snow, you can go down to your basement if you have enough room. In your living room if you have enough room. You can start correcting it without even having a ball in front of you. So I realized that I needed to have a totally different setup position. That is the primary cause. Now you might say, well, everyone thinks that, but you show this setup that I'm doing right here, and I actually showed it to a pro recently. He goes, oh, that looks like a professional setup. It is the enemy of the average amateur. It is absolutely the enemy. You might say, well, how is it the enemy? That doesn't make any sense. Why is it the enemy? Well, I'm going to show you why it's the enemy. So here's why it is the enemy. So you can see right here on the left, setup appearance, which is what I'm doing right here. Now that's just the appearance. If I was to straighten out, or if we were to straighten out the arms and then make the club straight with the arms, you're going to turf the club at least 3 to 6 inches into the ground. That's your actual setup position. And every pro you talk to say, oh yeah, you said you got to get your body out of the way. So they're saying that in order to actually hit the ball crisply, you got to do this. What if you can't do that? What are you going to do? Well, if you stand close to the ball like I'm doing on the left, I could do professional Quasimodo, which I can't do. And I can do, and I did do to varying degrees, the amateur stand-up move. Now for me, I didn't go over the top so much that I stood up, but I managed to swing on the inside and snap my wrist and hit too many hooks. Stand too close to the ball. So in this video, I'm going to show you pros who do this, well, a pro who does that, a pro who does this, and an amateur who does that. And I'm going to show you the solution. I'm going to show you the solution like in the next couple of images. So simple. So here's what you need to understand. This is a mathematical rule that no one can escape. Our setup distance from the ball should be based on our rotational movement skills. That means that this setup position is a disaster for people who do this or do this. And only 1% or less of all golfers can do that, which means this setup position is a disaster for most people. An absolute disaster for most people. So I gave the skull and crossbones here, skull and crossbones here. So if you are set up too close to the ball for your rotational movement skills, nothing you do, none of this stuff will help your swing. It is impossible if you're standing too close to the ball. So what should you do? Well, this was my setup until 2019, and then this became my setup. Now you don't have to go that far. You just need to make your setup position proper for your movement skills. This is proper for my movement skills. Now you might say, well, that's odd. No one does that, really. How about her? This is Nancy Lopez. You know who she is? You look at Nancy Lopez swings from when she was early in the LPGA tour before she got a little older and heavier. You watch her move, man, could she move. Her movement skills are unbelievable. And she's still set up like this. So when you set up like this, you give your arms, hands, club the freedom to fly by your body without having to worry about doing acrobatic rotational movement skills. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you the examples of a pro who does this, this, and an amateur who does this. So where did these pictures come from? So I'm going to tell you where they came from. And they came from this book that I wrote called The Amateur Golfer's Dilemma. You can go to YouTube, not YouTube, you can go to Amazon and you can just put the name in there and you can see the whopping price of 18 bucks. I think you got that. So what's in the book? Well, standing too close to the ball is a huge issue, and I describe it in multiple chapters from multiple perspectives. But I give you other ideas too. For example, I guarantee if this is you, which it probably is, or some version of this, your driver is too long for your movement skills. Now, I cut my driver down. I had like a 42 and a half, 43, went to a 44. Now I have a 46 also because my movement skills are better. So you got to cut it down if you're doing this, and before you can move longer. So why you should consider, I'm just highlighting this one because if you stop and pause, you go, one length irons, that's D Shambo. Well, he didn't think it up. So what about this acronym right here? Do you know this acronym? EQL. It stands for equal length irons. That was actually a iron set created by Tommy Armour Golf back in 1989. D Shambo wasn't even born until the 90s. In 98, when D Shambo was like 4 or 5, I cut down my 5 iron through 1 iron to be the same length as my 6 iron. Because my 7 iron, 6 iron was about right. Probably 6 iron was probably the right length. The shorter irons, weren't horrible, but still need them a little bit longer because I'm 6'2". So I cut my irons down to be equal length from 6 iron to 1 iron back in 1998 when D Shambo was 5. So I was just excited to see that you can actually get equal length irons now from several different companies actually. The one that I use is from One Iron Golf. Okay, so moving onward. Who's the best professional flexion and rotation example? Well, this is Tiger Woods in 2020 when he was like 45. Now, when he was younger, he was like an acrobat. Now he's just a great mover. I mean, look at that beautiful move. It's unbelievable. But you can see even his arms are not that close to his body. Some amateurs have their hands here. It's ridiculous. But here's the thing you need to see with Tiger at impact, is that there's basically a straight line from his shoulder down to the club. I mean, I wasn't perfect there, obviously, but you can see right down the line. So he is like fully so-called released the club. He's extended his arms fully through impact. You cannot do that if you're standing too close to the ball if your rotational skills are inadequate. So we're going to compare Tiger now, who is an exceptional professional flexion and rotator, to a professional Quasimodo. Now, if you look at her, you're going to say, well, who's that? Exactly. Why don't you know who she is? And the reason why you don't know who she is because she's professional Quasimodo. She's not a dynamic rotational flexion acrobat like Tiger and all the other ladies and men on the LPGA and PGA tours. So she played on the LPGA tour for 5 to 7 years and won one event. She's doing professional Quasimodo. Now, I'll tell you something interesting about this. Her instructors that she gives credit to are Bill Harmon and Dick Harmon. Tiger had Butch Harmon. Their father was Claude Harmon. So these two players were exposed to golf, a legendary golf family. And not one of them was told that they should move further back from the ball. Now, Tiger, very important for him as an aging guy, not when he was young so much. But for this golfer, her name is Nicole Castrell, she should have been told to set up further back from the ball. So here she is, after her career ended, and here's Phil Blackmar. And they're talking about Tiger Woods. Look at his unbelievable dynamic rotational and lateral flexing acrobat move compared to when he was older in 2014. Now, Nicole tells us that Tiger says he is always playing catch-up with his new golf swing. Well, what does that mean? And also you have to look at this. This is 2000 Tiger. And this is, so he was, I guess, 25 here, and here he's pushing 40. Well, during those 15 years, he had a bunch of knee surgeries and a back surgery, so no wonder why. Or he was heading for a back surgery in 2014. So you can clearly see why he's not rotating as well. So what Tiger really should have said was this: I am struggling with rotating my body through the ball the way I did when I was younger, which is the actual issue. Which means that Tiger was struggling and is struggling from a low-grade amateur golfer's dilemma. Now, for me, I need to move back, 6 inches at least. Tiger is probably 1 or 2. But no matter who you are, The average golfer stands too close to the ball. If you're an amateur, you absolutely do. If you're a pro and you're aging, you might. And if you're a pro and you're not playing as great as you would like Nicole, you might. So you can just see here. So let's look at Nicole in a couple seconds. So Tiger's setup distance from the ball should be based upon his rotational movement skills. This is a mathematical rule for everybody, even Tiger. So here's Nicole. So when I saw when I saw this on the Golf Channel, I wanted to know who she was. So see what her, is she a pro? Who is she? So here's the Quasimodo I captured on this video. So here she is at setup, traditional setup, just like you saw my setup when 20 years ago. So when I swung, I did a little bit of a hip thrust forward and stood up and rotated a little bit. Look what Nicole does. Quasimodo. I mean, that's like unbelievable. Hoi! So now imagine telling someone that, okay, this is your setup position. So just assume the setup position. Now here's what I want you to do for impact. And you're going to just hold that position for a second. We're going to put you into Quasimodo. You say, what are you talking about? What am I doing Quasimodo for? Well, Nicole was able, now this of course happens in like, the downswing from top to impact is like less than a third of a second. So this is taking place in like a mere fraction of a second. So you can't see it with the naked eye unless you capture it the way I did. So she was able to assume Quasimodo because she's too close to the ball and maintain Quasimodo and swing down the line. That's how she was an LPGA player. Other people who do Quasimodo, they can't. I've seen amateurs who do Quasimodo and they're 4, 5, 8, 10 handicaps. So she was able to be Quasimodo and be an LPGA player for several years. Doesn't make any difference. She only won one event and pretty much no one knows who she is because she does Quasimodo. So for everybody, Nicole as well, she would have backed up. I mean, if she could have played that well doing Quasimodo for 7 years, she might have been a star had she been told to move back. She was probably a 3 to 6 inches move back. She's got really bad lower trunk rotation movement skills. So this is an amateur doing the classic stand-up move. And I can tell you, if you look at this, you should say to yourself, okay, immediately, this guy is too close to the ball and his club is too long for his height. I don't know how tall this guy is. I'm guessing 5'9" maybe. And his club here is probably a 46. So he stands too close to the ball. He cannot rotate. So what does he do? He's going to handcuff himself and stand up. What do you mean by handcuff? It's kind of like this chicken winging you can see there. So he's got his club angle, he's got his forearm angle, and he's got his upper arm angle. Right? So no power. You can see where the ball's flying. The ball's flying right. Because he's too close to the ball, right? So everybody's setup position should be based upon our rotational movement skills. It is a mathematical fact for everybody. Everybody, there is no escaping it. So if I'd only known back when I started playing golf, I grew up in a town where there weren't public golf courses, so none of us played golf. I didn't start playing golf right until I was 35. Never really played. A couple of times in college, I had a college course. Played maybe 10 times then. Played a little bit when I was caddying during college. But really full rounds, maybe 10 before I was 35. So when I was 35, I was taught to set up like this. I should have been taught to set up like this. That would have fixed my dilemma because otherwise I'm fairly coordinated. So finally, so in 1995, in 2019, I changed my setup position so it suited my rotational movement skills because it's a mathematical rule. So that's why I did this. 2019, here I am, older. But you can see how straight my arms are. They're literally, well, they're just like this. This should have been my setup position if it only was. So the way to look at this, you think setup equals impact position. Your setup position equals your impact position. I mean, it's not perfect, but that's just the conceptualization. So let me show you how this looks. And this, by the way, was summer of 2020, and I was still rotating. I was still spinning too much because I had that built into my system for over 20 years of swinging improperly. But you can see, though, how when you set up like this, if your body movement isn't horrific, you literally go right through the ball. Look how nice that looks. Most amateurs would kill for that. Now, I'm going to show you what I've done more recently, but most amateurs would kill for this. And why would they kill for this? Well, because when you make your setup your impact position, this is how you look going through the ball versus doing these two. So by making set up your impact, you can get rid of both of these horrific compensatory movements and have an impact position that's professional, even though you don't get there with professional skills and professional speed. So this was a year later. So you can see, I put this red line across to demonstrate one of the biggest issues is standing up. Now when you look at this impact position over here, you can see how the club is by my body. I haven't broken my wrist. I'm staying back, as they say. You can kind of see, you can kind of backtrack and see how I just stayed I stayed with the shot all the way through. Now I didn't have this image originally, and I wanted to put this in there because it shows the the so-called lag that people talk about. They call it lag, as you move your hands toward the ball. Well, pros are here, between here and here, which is why they pound the ball so far, which is why I can't pound the ball. Like I think with this movement, I'm a 230 to 240, 50, maybe 60 in the air. That's it. That's it. If you're here, 290 here over 3. Where are most amateurs? Boom. Horrible. Which is why lots of amateurs cannot fly a drive 200 yards, because this would be what they call casting the club. So at this point, what happens is the average amateur has spun out. Their arms are straight. They got no power, and then they just spin through the ball, which is why they have virtually zero power as they go through impact. So let's look at the great impact position of Tiger Woods. There he is. So let's look at my impact position as a total unknown you never heard of unless you came across this video. That's not horrific looking, right? I mean, you certainly want to beat Tiger. Now, you can see I've spun. Tiger has my heels up here. So I'm spinning. That's what I've been working on, as I showed you in the previous images. But despite that flaw, let's compare it to Tiger to the amateur and then me to the amateur. And you can see the massive difference. Complete loss of power by chicken wing and getting everything out of it if you set up for impact. So you can see Tiger in my position. Now I'm just going to get rid of, if you look at the dynamic movement, I mean, this is a still shot, and look how dynamic he looks compared to me. This is why we amateurs basically suck. We just lack dynamic movement skills. So the best way to approximate it is to at least get your impact right, which you can do if you set up your impact position. So it looks kind of similar. Let's blow it up. I don't look that horrific compared to the greatest golfer of all time, right? Now let's compare it to the average amateur. You can see totally different look. So my arm straight down to the club. This guy bent, and there, the chicken wing. You can see no pro has chicken wings. If you want to be a decent amateur, you want to get rid of the chicken wing and all the rest of the stuff. So you can clearly see that setting up for impact is the way that pretty much every amateur needs to go, and some pros as well. And again, how do you determine this? You determine this by figuring out, taking videos of yourself swinging and making sure that you don't lose your posture and you don't stand up during impact. If you do, you need to back up. Greatest tip I ever luckily came across. I'm going to show you how I came across it in a few minutes. But let's just consider 3 pros who set up for impact. So again, the primary cause, we changed the impact, and there she is again, Nancy Lopez. Another picture of Nancy Lopez. You can see her setup. Looks like even more straight line than mine. Who else can you think of on the PGA Tour who does this? Bryson D Shambo. The problem with D Shambo now, if you hear his name, is you think long drive, hit it as far as you can. Every club is the same length, and people forget that prior to becoming the long drive guy, he's just a pure swinger, pure. I mean, think about how many pros have won the NCAA amateur and the NCAA championship, the U.S. amateur in the same year, and then become pros and win a U.S. Open. There's only 3. Now, of course, these 2 guys won every major. But these 3 guys, so these 2 won every major in addition to the NCAA and the U.S. Amateur. But only Bryson D Shambo won the U.S. Open plus the other 2 coveted amateur events. That's how good of a move the guy has. So the thing that you should take from Bryson D Shambo, block out. You don't need to do one length clubs. I do, but you don't need to. Block all the static out and just think D Shambo makes setup impact. If you go into YouTube and look for older swings of D Shambo, pure setup is impact. But who would be the greatest of all time? If you want to say the greatest of all time, why every golfer should at least assume the DeChambeau position, my position, Nancy Lopez, and a handful of others who do it. What would be your motivation? Well, the greatest ball striker in history, that's what he did. Now, he really looks like he's way out there, right? This is Mo Norman. Craig Shanklin, PGA teaching pro, did this video of Mo back in 1994. Craig met Mo in 1974 when Mo was like, what was it, 74, like 30, 36, I guess, because Mo was born in 29. Did I get the numbers right? I think I did. 30, 40, is that right? 30? No, 44. Anyway, I can't do math on the fly. So Craig Shanklin met Mo when he swung like a young guy. And he goes, man, because I met Craig Shanklin, took a lesson from him. He goes, boy, could he move. Everyone, now here's the interesting thing. Mo Norman spent, this picture here is from Flagler Beach, which is about 20 miles north of Daytona Beach. Mo Norman spent 40-ish until he got sick at the very end. 40 of his winter, so 6 months a year, he would come down from Canada and stay in Ormond Beach, which is in the Daytona Beach area. So I know lots of guys who watched him play and played with him, and they said when he was young, unbelievable. I know a guy who's 72, 3 now, who first watched Mo. He used to go over at a local club and watch Mo hit balls when he was 7 years old. he saw Mo when he was like in his 20s, and he said that nothing is just absolutely unbelievable. And everyone talks about like Mo's setup, right? He's got his straight, rigid legs, kind of bent forward way more than anybody else. His arms are way out. He puts this is a 4-wood, almost a foot behind the ball, whatever it is. Irons are about 6 inches. Driver can be back this far. So they focus on the awkward look and the fact that the club is set up so far behind the ball. What they don't focus on is the main thing, and that is he sets up for impact. Now it looks like he's kind of squatting down a little bit, which he is, which tells us Mo uses his legs. Amateurs don't use their legs. And over here you can see he's not really, he's squatting sort of, not just a little bit, but he's driving through the ball. It's unbelievable movement. I mean, absolutely unbelievable. And he had that, I mean, he had unbelievable so-called lag because of his lower extreme movement was so good. But what do you need to know about Mo Norman? All the static can go away and just think Lopez, Norman, DeChambeau, setup, impact. That's how you want to look at it. And so here's me doing my best effort in 2019, 2020. It's better now. Setup position, impact. So the primary way to solve the amateur's dilemma is to make your setup your impact position. It is so easy to do. You can do this in your, if you have a high enough living room or garage or wherever, backyard if it's not freezing cold right now, because it is January 26th or whatever it is, 25th, 26th. You can do this. You can do it without hitting a ball, without buying anything. That's how cool this primary error factor fix is. So again, if you have found this information interesting and you'd like to check out more, see what's in the book, you can go right to Amazon and put in the Amateur Golfer's Dilemma, and you can click through it a little bit as far as Amazon lets you go. And if you want to risk $18, you could do that. Here is the content of the book, 24 chapters. Working on a 25th chapter now. It'll probably be, it's just a little bit of golf history, irrelevant to the swing. So you shouldn't worry or wait for that if that's what you might think. And you can also link to dflame.com, which is my main website where all of my books are available, including this book. So future videos will be largely addressing more error factors, but the primary one, of course, is setup being impact. And I'll show you how no one improves unless they make that change. They all struggle. And I'll also show you why drills and gadgets are mostly ineffective so long as you're standing too close to the ball. If you move back, you can set your golf life free and stop feeling like this guy here. And by the way, you can see the title here, how PJ professionals unknowingly prevent amateurs from breaking these numbers. I never met a PJ professional who hoped that we sucked. They all know you're supposed to get your body out of the way. It's just that it's never been a golf teaching approach to get amateurs or wannabe pros who don't rotate well to move further back from the ball. And that is the key error factor that all of us need to eliminate.